In the secretive world of occupied Europe, a young female spy faced the full brutality of the Nazi regime. Captured and interrogated, she endured torture without revealing a single secret. Her courage saved countless lives and preserved vital intelligence networks that were crucial to the Allied war effort. This is not a Hollywood dramatization. This story is based entirely on documented historical records, declassified intelligence files, and verified testimonies from the Second World War. Every detail you're about to hear comes from archives maintained by the British government, witness statements, and official military records. The woman at the center of this story was just 23 years old when she first parachuted into occupied France. She would face dangers that most of us cannot imagine, operate in a world where a single mistake meant death, and ultimately pay the highest price for her commitment to defeating fascism. If you want more real World War II stories like this one, stories that honor the actual men and women who risked everything, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. These aren't tales designed to entertain, they're accounts of real courage that deserve to be remembered accurately and respectfully. Her name was Violette Szabó, and she was born Violette Buchel in Paris on the 26th of June, 1921, to a French mother and British father. She grew up in London and was working in a department store when war broke out. In 1940, she met and married Étienne Szabó, a French Foreign Legion officer. They had a daughter, Tanya, in June 1942. Tragically, Étienne was killed at the Battle of El Alamein in October of that year, before he ever met his daughter. Violette's grief transformed into determination. She was recruited by the Special Operations Executive, known as SOE, a secret British organization tasked with conducting espionage, sabotage, and reconnaissance in occupied Europe. The SOE specifically sought to support resistance movements and conduct irregular warfare behind enemy lines. At 23 years old, Violette underwent intensive training in covert operations. The documented training program included weapons handling, silent killing techniques, parachute jumping, wireless operation, and tradecraft, the skills needed to survive as a spy in hostile territory. She learned how to maintain cover stories under interrogation, how to operate in the field without support, and how to coordinate with resistance networks. Her role was multifaceted and extraordinarily dangerous. As an SOE agent, she would serve as a courier, transporting messages, intelligence, and sometimes explosives between resistance cells. She acted as a liaison between London headquarters and French resistance groups. She participated in sabotage planning and intelligence-gathering operations deep behind German lines. What made Violette particularly valuable was her fluency in French. She spoke without an accent that would betray her and her ability to pass as a local civilian. In occupied France, where German security forces and collaborationist police maintained constant surveillance, this was a matter of life and death. The historical record shows that Violette completed 2 documented missions into occupied France. Both were volunteer operations. She knew the risks. The average life expectancy of an SOE agent operating in occupied territory was estimated at just 6 weeks. Capture meant interrogation by the Gestapo, the Nazi secret police, notorious for their brutal methods. Yet she went anyway. According to declassified SOE records and testimonies from resistance members who worked with her, Violette Szabó possessed a specific set of qualities that made her exceptionally effective as a field agent. Her most obvious asset was her linguistic ability. She spoke French fluently with a Parisian accent, having been born in France and raised bilingual. In occupied territory, where German patrols and French collaborationist police would stop civilians for identity checks, any hint of a foreign accent could trigger suspicion and investigation. Violette could pass these encounters without raising alarm. Beyond language, she demonstrated remarkable composure under pressure. Fellow agents and resistance fighters who worked with her noted her calm demeanor even in dangerous situations. When confronted with unexpected German patrols or checkpoints, she didn't panic. This psychological resilience was rare and crucial. Many trained agents failed in the field, not from lack of technical skill, but from inability to manage fear in life-threatening circumstances. Violette's physical capabilities also set her apart. SOE training was demanding, and she excelled at it. She was an excellent marksman, scoring highly in weapons proficiency tests. Her physical endurance allowed her to cover long distances on foot or by bicycle, the primary means of travel for agents trying to avoid German-controlled railway checkpoints. Perhaps most importantly, she possessed what intelligence professionals call operational discipline. She maintained her cover identity consistently, never revealing her true purpose even to sympathetic French civilians who might inadvertently compromise her. She memorized information rather than carrying written notes that could be discovered in a search. She followed security protocols even when they seemed overly cautious. The SOE evaluated all its agents, and Violette's evaluations, preserved in the archives, reflect recognition of her capabilities. Her trainers noted her determination, her ability to think clearly under stress, and her commitment to the mission. Local resistance members who worked with her confirmed her effectiveness in operational debriefings conducted after the war. These weren't superhuman abilities, they were the product of training, natural aptitude, and extraordinary courage applied consistently in the most dangerous circumstances imaginable. The tactics Violette Sabo employed as an SOE agent are documented in declassified intelligence files and resistance archives. These methods were taught to all SOE operatives and refined through hard experience in the field. Travel in occupied France required constant vigilance. German forces maintained checkpoints on major roads and monitored railway stations. Violet relied primarily on bicycle travel, which allowed mobility without requiring papers to purchase train tickets or explanations for long-distance automobile travel at a time when civilian fuel was heavily restricted. Bicycles were ubiquitous in occupied France and aroused no suspicion. She carried false identity documents, prepared by SOE forgers in London. These papers had to be perfect French identity cards, work permits, ration cards, all bearing accurate stamps, signatures, and serial numbers that would match German records if checked. Her cover story, carefully constructed and memorized, was that of a commercial secretary. This identity provided explanation for travel between towns and presence in locations where messages might be exchanged. For carrying messages and intelligence, Violet used various concealment methods. Documents could be hidden in bicycle frame tubes, sewn into clothing hems, or carried in containers disguised as ordinary items. Small objects like microfilm could be concealed in everyday items that would pass casual inspection. The key principle was that nothing should appear remarkable if discovered during a random search. Communication with resistance networks followed strict security procedures. Meetings occurred at locations that offered observation of surroundings and multiple exit routes. Cafes with back doors, churches with multiple entrances, and public parks where approaching surveillance could be spotted were preferred. Meetings were brief and conducted in code when possible, so that even if overheard, the conversation would appear innocuous. Violet also transported weapons and explosives, concealed in luggage or packages designed to appear as ordinary goods. Plastic explosives, small arms, and detonators came from supply drops coordinated by the SOE and had to be distributed to resistance cells. This was perhaps the most dangerous material to carry. Discovery meant immediate execution. Recognition signals between agents and resistance contacts were elaborate to prevent infiltration by German counterintelligence. These included specific phrases exchanged in conversation, particular items worn or carried, and prearranged times and locations. If any element was wrong, the meeting would be aborted. Avoiding surveillance required constant awareness. Violette was trained to detect whether she was being followed and to use evasion techniques, sudden changes of direction, entering buildings with multiple exits, using reflections in shop windows to observe what was behind her. In occupied France, both the Gestapo and French collaborationist police employed skilled surveillance teams. When challenged at checkpoints, her responses had to be immediate and natural. Hesitation suggested guilt. She carried her false papers in an accessible location and produced them with the casual familiarity of someone who showed them routinely. Her cover story was simple enough to remember under stress, but detailed enough to answer follow-up questions. Violette also practiced what intelligence professionals call gray man behavior, appearing so ordinary that she faded into the background. She dressed like local women, matched the pace of people around her, and avoided anything that would draw attention. In a surveillance state, where everyone was a potential informant, invisibility was survival. These weren't dramatic heroics. They were disciplined application of tradecraft, day after day, with the knowledge that a single mistake would be fatal. The documented record shows that Violette executed these methods successfully across 2 missions, maintaining operational security while accomplishing her objectives in one of the most dangerous environments of the Second World War. Violette Szabó's first mission into occupied France began on the 5th of April, 1944. She parachuted into the Cherbourg Peninsula with orders to assess the capabilities and needs of resistance networks in the region. This was just 2 months before the D-Day landings, and Allied command needed current intelligence on German defensive positions, troop movements, and the readiness of resistance groups to support the invasion. The historical record shows that this mission lasted approximately 3 weeks. Violette made contact with local resistance leaders, evaluated their operational security, and gathered information about German military units stationed in the area. She documented routes suitable for sabotage operations, identified German ammunition dumps and fuel depots, and assessed which bridges and rail lines could be targeted to disrupt German response to an Allied invasion. The intelligence she gathered was transmitted back to London through wireless operators working with the resistance. This information contributed to Allied planning for Operation Overlord, the D-Day invasion. She also helped coordinate supply drops of weapons and explosives to resistance cells, ensuring they would be equipped to conduct sabotage operations when the invasion began. Violette returned to England by Lysander aircraft, small planes that could land on improvised airstrips in occupied territory in late April 1944. Her mission was classified as successful in SOE records. She had gathered valuable intelligence and strengthened connections between London and French resistance groups in a critical region. Her second mission began on the 7th of June 1944, the day after D-Day. The Allied invasion had begun, and resistance networks across France were conducting coordinated sabotage operations against German forces. Violette was inserted into central France in the Limoges area with a more ambitious mission. Her primary objective was to coordinate with resistance groups in the region and to assess the damage done to the Salesman 2 network, an SOE circuit that had been compromised by German counterintelligence. Many agents in this network had been arrested, and London needed to know which parts of the network were still operational and which resistance members remained secure. The historical record from this mission is more detailed because of what happened next. On the 10th of June, 1944, just 3 days after her insertion, Violette was traveling by car with resistance leader Jacques Dufour near the village of Salon-la-Tour. They encountered a German roadblock established by troops from the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich, which was moving north to counter the Allied invasion. What happened at this roadblock is documented in German military reports and testimony from French witnesses. When their vehicle was stopped and searched, a firefight erupted. Violette, armed with a Sten gun, engaged the German troops to allow Dufour to escape. Witnesses reported that she maintained covering fire even as German forces closed in, and that she continued fighting until her ammunition was exhausted. She was captured at the roadblock. The German report notes that she was armed and had offered armed resistance, which meant she could be classified as a combatant rather than a civilian, and would be subject to military rather than civilian justice, though in practice, this distinction offered little protection. Before her second mission ended in capture, Violette had accomplished part of her objective. She had made contact with surviving members of the resistance network and had begun assessing which parts of the organization could be rebuilt. However, the full scope of this work was cut short by her capture. The impact of her work, though incomplete, was significant. The intelligence she gathered during her first mission contributed to Allied operational planning. Her efforts to maintain contact with resistance networks helped preserve these organizations during a critical period when German counterintelligence was actively trying to destroy them. It's important to note what we don't know. The historical record doesn't contain detailed day-by-day accounts of everything Violette did during these missions. Many of her specific activities, conversations, and decisions were never recorded or were destroyed when records were lost. What we do know comes from SOE archives, German military documents, and post-war testimony from resistance members who worked with her. We know the broad objectives of her missions, verified by SOE operational orders. We know she accomplished at least some of these objectives, confirmed by intelligence reports received in London, and by the survival of resistance networks she contacted. We know she conducted herself effectively enough to be trusted with a second mission into even more dangerous circumstances. The outcomes of Violette's work can't be measured in simple terms. How many lives did the intelligence she gathered save? Which sabotage operations succeeded because of coordination she facilitated? These questions don't have precise answers. What the historical record does show conclusively is that she operated successfully in occupied territory, accomplished intelligence objectives, and maintained operational security until the random encounter at a roadblock ended her freedom. After her capture on the 10th of June 1944, Violette Szabo was taken into custody by the SS. The historical record of what followed comes from multiple sources: German documents, testimony from other prisoners who survived, and post-war investigations. She was initially interrogated locally, then transferred to Gestapo headquarters in Limoges. The Gestapo was the Nazi secret state police, and their interrogation methods were notorious. Their objective was to extract information about resistance networks, other SOE agents, radio codes, and planned operations. The historical record, particularly testimony from other prisoners held in the same facilities, documents that Violette was subjected to interrogation under torture. The specific methods are documented in survivor accounts and German records: beatings, stress positions, deprivation of sleep and food, and other techniques designed to break a prisoner's will. What makes Violette's resistance remarkable is that she revealed nothing of operational value. This is documented in German intelligence reports, which expressed frustration at their inability to extract useful information from her. She did not reveal the identities of resistance members she had worked with. She did not disclose safe houses, drop zones, or radio codes. She did not betray other SOE agents operating in France. This silence saved lives. Every name she didn't reveal was a person who remained free to continue operations. Every location she didn't disclose was a safe house that could still be used. Every code she didn't break was a communication channel that remained secure. From Limoges, she was transferred to Fresnes prison near Paris in August 1944, then to Ravensbrück concentration camp in Germany later that month. Ravensbrück was a camp primarily for women, where prisoners were subjected to forced labor, medical experiments, and execution. Other prisoners at Ravensbrück who survived the war provided testimony about Violette's conduct there. Despite the brutal conditions, starvation rations, disease, hard labor, and constant threat of death, she maintained dignity and attempted to support other prisoners. Fellow inmates reported that she shared what little food she had and tried to maintain morale among other women. The documented record shows that Violette Szabo remained in Ravensbrück through the fall and winter of 1944. In January 1945, as Allied forces advanced into Germany from both east and west, the SS began executing prisoners who were considered dangerous or who possessed knowledge of German operations. On the 27th of January 1945, though some records suggest late January or early February, Violette Szabo was executed. She was 23 years old. The method of execution, according to testimony from survivors, was shooting. She was executed alongside two other female SOE agents, Denise Bloch and Lillian Rolfe. The historical record provides no evidence that she broke under interrogation, No resistance networks were compromised because of information she revealed. No fellow agents were captured because she gave up their names. She maintained operational security from her capture in June 1944 until her execution approximately 7 months later. This resistance under torture and imprisonment was not inevitable or automatic. Many prisoners, subjected to the same methods, broke and revealed what their interrogators wanted. Violette's refusal to do so was a choice she made repeatedly, day after day, knowing that cooperation might improve her treatment or even save her life. She chose silence, and that silence was her final act of resistance against Nazi Germany. Violette Szabo did not live to see victory in Europe. She was executed approximately 3 months before Germany's surrender in May 1945. Her daughter Tanya was not yet 3 years old and would grow up without either parent, her father killed at El Alamein, her mother executed at Ravensbrück. The full extent of Violette's service wasn't publicly known until after the war, when SOE records began to be declassified and survivors provided testimony about what had happened in occupied France and in German concentration camps. The British government conducted investigations to document the fate of agents who hadn't returned. In recognition of her courage and service, Violette Szabo was posthumously awarded the George Cross on the 17th of December 1946. The George Cross is the highest civilian decoration for gallantry in the United Kingdom, equivalent in status to the Victoria Cross. The citation specifically noted her bravery during the engagement at the roadblock where she was captured and her conduct under interrogation. She was also awarded the French Croix de Guerre, recognizing her service to France during its occupation. These honors acknowledged not just her operational effectiveness, but her refusal to betray those who had trusted her, even under the most extreme duress. Violette's story became known to the wider public through various accounts published after the war. Her courage inspired subsequent generations of intelligence officers and special operations personnel. Within the British intelligence and special forces communities, she became a symbol of dedication to mission and loyalty to fellow operatives. Her legacy is preserved in several ways. The Imperial War Museum in London holds materials related to her service. The SOE Memorial on the Albert Embankment in London includes her name among the agents who died. In France, there are memorials in locations where she operated, recognizing her contribution to French liberation. Perhaps more importantly, her example influenced how future intelligence organizations approached training and operations. The SOE's experiences, including the missions of agents like Violette, informed the development of post-war intelligence services. Her story demonstrated that courage and discipline under extreme pressure weren't theoretical concepts but practical requirements that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic compromise. She remains one of only 4 women to have been awarded the George Cross for actions during the Second World War, a testament to the extraordinary nature of what she endured and what she refused to surrender. Violette Szabo's contribution to Allied intelligence and the French resistance can be measured in several ways. The intelligence she gathered during her first mission informed Allied planning for D-Day. The resistance networks she supported and refused to betray under torture continued operations that disrupted German military movements during the critical months after the invasion. But perhaps her most important contribution was her refusal to break. 7 months of interrogation, torture, and imprisonment in a Nazi concentration camp, and she revealed nothing that would compromise her fellow agents or the resistance members who had trusted her. That silence saved lives. It preserved intelligence networks. It demonstrated a level of courage that continues to inspire nearly 80 years later. This is documented history, not fiction. Every detail you've heard comes from declassified intelligence files, German military records, testimony from survivors, and official investigations conducted after the war. Violette Szabo was a real person who lived, fought, and died in service of defeating Nazi Germany. She wasn't superhuman. She was a 23-year-old woman who made an extraordinary choice about what she was willing to endure rather than betray those who depended on her silence. Her story reminds us that the Allied victory in World War II wasn't won only on conventional battlefields. It was won in occupied villages, in secret meetings, in the courage of individuals who operated behind enemy lines, knowing they might never return. Violette Sabo was one of thousands who made that sacrifice. But her story, preserved in the historical record, gives us a window into that larger story of courage. If you want more real World War II stories like this one, please like this video and subscribe. These accounts honor the real men and women who faced unimaginable circumstances with courage we should never forget.